Colonist life in the 1700s is tough, but happy. Forging colonies from a sparsely inhabited continent requires hard work. Most colonists engage in difficult labor, but have found pride in forging a new path, one different from any that their ancestors had taken. Leaving home in order to carve out a new life likely came with large amounts of satisfaction for the colonists. Many groups of colonists left Europe to escape what they disliked about it: higher populations, dirty conditions, and even oppression from fellow countrymen or their own government. Groups like the Quakers found refuge in distancing themselves from all of these things. All good things must come to an end, and while early groups enjoyed large amounts of independence, as travel and communication gets easier, the strong arm of the English government is better able to reach across the sea to exercise more and more control over the colonies. What drives this exercise of control? The 7 Years' War. Together, we will look at the repercussions of the 7 Years' War and how the conflict had lasting impacts on both English and American colonies. Also known as the French and Indian War, this conflict began over a dispute over who owned the Ohio River Valley. While the French held the land rights, the ever land-hungry colonists were eager to expand into this new territory. Tensions grew as the English demanded the French land as their own, and fighting broke out. Initially, the French had the upper hand. This was because the English still maintained older methods of warfare, while the French, who were aided by the Indians, adapted a guerrilla style of warfare. This caused thousands of casualties for the British early in the war. What started as a war in the Americas gradually made its way over to Europe. After almost a decade of fighting, the war eventually ended with the Treaty of Paris, which gave the English ownership over the Ohio River Valley and other land that had previously been owned by the French. While there were a few positives from this war, the negatives far outweighed them. A few of these negatives were that the war doubled the British national debt. It forced them to release the Proclamation of 1763, which halted westward expansion. It forced the British to have more involvement in the colonies. It helped to educate the colonists in the tactics of war. And it worsened the relationship with the Native Americans. The British could no longer afford to enter another war or fund any other conflicts, which is why they halted westward expansion with the Proclamation of 1763. The Proclamation could not have been released at a worse time. Fresh off the First Great Awakening, which championed independent thinking and the lack of attention that the English had been paying to them during the second half of the 7 Years' War, colonists were infuriated at this. To make matters worse, English released a series of taxes, including the Stamp Act, Quarter Act, and Townshend Acts, in order to pay the massive debts acquired during the war. Sentiments began to shift as colonists began to feel that their own country was at odds with them, rather than supporting their efforts to colonize the continent. A Continental Congress, consisting of representatives from each of the colonies, released the following statement regarding the taxes.
That it is inseparably essential to the freedom of a people and the undoubted right of Englishmen that no taxes be imposed on them, but with their own consent, given personally or by their representatives. That the people of these colonies are not, and from their local circumstances cannot be, represented in the House of Commons in Great Britain. That the only representatives of the people of these colonies are persons chosen therein by themselves, and that no taxes ever have been or can be constitutionally imposed on them, but by their respective legislatures. That all supplies to the Crown, being free gifts of the people, it is unreasonable and inconsistent with the principles and spirit of the British Constitution for the people of Great Britain to grant to His Majesty the property of the colonists.
The Proclamation of 1763, the additional taxes and laws, and taxation without representation all turned the colonies into ticking time bombs. centers of rebellion. All of these set the stage for the American Revolution and the War for Independence. This War for Independence was driven by the 7 Years' War, and many claim that it even contributed to helping colonists win the war because of the crippling effects that the 7 Years' War had on the British.